This is the new Renault Megane E-Tech, and in this very cold, very wet review, we're going to tell you the 10 things that you need to know about it. But before we start, if you want to see lots more new car reviews like this, subscribe to our channel, and to save more than £1,200 on a Megane E-Tech right now, go to whatcar.com. The Megane is a car name that dates back well over 20 years, but the 4th generation model of that car is the last one that we're going to see powered by fuel. It's been replaced entirely by this Megane E-Tech. You can only buy this as a fully electric car. There aren't going to be any petrol or hybrid versions of it at all. And it's built on an all-new platform for Renault, which is actually shared between Renault and Nissan. So underneath, this is very similar to the Nissan Ariya. The Megane E-Tech follows the Renault Zoe, which was launched back in 2013. That was a really great small electric car, especially because it arrived at a time when there was hardly anything around in the small electric car market. It really marked out Renault as an early small EV pioneer. So it does seem slightly odd that it's taken Renault so long to follow that up with their next electric car, but here it is. And when the Zoe does go off sale, it's not going to be directly replaced. Instead, Renault's electric lineup is going to focus on the Megane E-Tech and also the upcoming Renault 4 and Renault 5. So where does the Megane E-Tech fit in the electric car market? Well, size-wise, it's actually pretty similar to the regular hatchback Megane, which also means that it's similar in size to other electric cars like the VW ID.3, the Cupra Born and the MG4. And the interior that you get in the Megane E-Tech is very good compared to all those competitors. You get this attractive look and layout no matter which Megane you go for, and it has a lot of nice touches like this fabric up on the dashboard. You have a really nice, good quality feeling leather wrapped steering wheel as well. It's not perfect in here because some of the plastics around, like up here and lower down as well, don't feel amazing quality. But overall, it's definitely at least as good as the impressive Born, and certainly a big step forwards from the interior of the MG4. No matter which Megane you go for, which trim level you want, you get this layout which includes a digital driver display connected to this touchscreen infotainment system up here. And you can see that it's tilted slightly towards the driver, so that means it's easier to see and easier to interact with as well. The system itself is okay. It's reasonably responsive, it's got a fairly intuitive layout, and it's better in that respect than the Born and the MG4's infotainment system. And if you go for Techno trim in the Megane, then you get slightly different software which has some Google features on it. But to be honest, even the entry-level version of this car gets Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, so you can just still access Google Maps through the smartphone integration rather than having it on the system itself, so it's really not necessary to go for that range-topping version of the infotainment system. What's also good are these physical controls for the climate at the bottom of the touchscreen here. On the steering wheel, you've also got some buttons, and they look like they might be touch sensitive, like the rubbish controls that you get in the Cupra Born and the VW ID.3. But they're not. You actually have to physically press them to use them, so they actually work pretty well, unlike in the Cupra Born. But what's unusual in here is the fact that you have these 3 stalks on the steering column. So obviously this one controls the windscreen wipers, as you'd expect, but you've also got the gear selector up here, and this bottom one gives you some media functions, so you can turn the volume up or you can change track as well. And this is something that's been on Renaults for many, many years now. And to be honest, it's quite good having all of this here because it means that these important functions fall easily to hand. And the driving position generally is very good in this car. It's a real strength of what the Megane E-Tech offers. You have comfortable seats, you've got loads of adjustment. It also feels relatively sporty as well because you've got this heavily raked windscreen. The only problem might be the view out the back because, as you can see, there's massive rear pillars, there isn't much glass, but it's not a huge issue because you get a reversing camera and rear parking sensors as standard. Space in the back of the Megane E-Tech isn't particularly great, even by the standards of small electric cars. So if you're 6 foot sat in these rear seats, then your head will be brushing the roof lining. And really, it's headroom which is the most disappointing aspect of the space on offer in the back. Because legroom is okay, even if it's not as much as what's offered by other rivals. But another disappointing thing is the fact that these rear windows are pretty narrow, so it doesn't really feel that open and airy back here. So kids will be absolutely fine sat in the back, but if you're regularly going to be carrying adults in the rear seats of your small electric car, there are quite a few other rivals that are more generous than the Megane, particularly the Cupra Born and the MG4. But things are much better when it comes to the boot. So you can see it's a fairly short load bay, but it's really deep. And there's also some underfloor storage there, which is big enough to put the charging cables in. And in total, we managed to fit 7 carry-on size suitcases into the boot of the Megane E-Tech. We got 6 in a Cupra Born and 5 in an MG4. So really, this is usefully bigger than those other rivals. The only downside might be that you can see this loading lip is pretty high. So if you're heaving heavy things in and out of the boot of the Megane, it'll take a little bit more effort than it would in a Born or an MG4. Another slightly annoying thing with this car is that to open the boot, you've got this tiny button here and you can't even get an electric tailgate. So that means once you've popped that button, you have to get your fingers under the boot lid, which just means in weather like this, you're always going to have grubby hands if you need to open the boot. Here in the UK, every Megane E-Tech that you buy will come with a 60 kilowatt hour battery, and that is enough to give it a claimed WLTP range of 280 miles. But we carried out a range test with this car and loads of other electric cars in cold, wintry conditions like this, and the Megane E-Tech covered 189 miles from a full charge until it was completely dead. So that is quite a bit less than the 280 miles that it claims to be able to do, but on the same test in the same conditions, a Born recorded a similar result and an MG4 only went a few miles further. If you want to see the full results of that winter range test, then click on the link to watch that video. The other thing to bear in mind with the Megane E-Tech is that if you go for a range-topping iconic version of this car, then you get a heat pump, which effectively means that when you're warming the interior in cold conditions, it uses energy in a more efficient way than a Megane E-Tech without a heat pump. When it comes to charging the Megane, the maximum speed it can top up at is 130 kilowatts, which means a 10 to 80% charge will take around 30 minutes if you plug into a powerful enough rapid charger. A 50 kilowatt charger will give the same top up in just under an hour, and a full charge from a 7 kilowatt home wall box will take around 10 hours. That's all roughly comparable with the Born and the MG4. Every Megane E-Tech gets the same setup on the road, which is a 215 brake horsepower electric motor driving the front wheels. And this is a fairly quick, small electric car. So it'll do 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 6.9 seconds, which is a bit quicker than what you'll manage in a Cupra Born and also in an MG4. But the problem with the Megane E-Tech is when it comes to slowing down, because the brake pedal isn't very good at all. There's nothing wrong with the brakes themselves, so the stopping distances in this car are absolutely fine, and you'll be able to stop it if you need to try and avoid a crash. There's nothing wrong with it from a safety perspective, but the brake pedal feel isn't very good even by electric car standards. The problem is that there's quite a lot of dead travel at the top of the pedal, and then as you get towards the floor, suddenly the brakes grab like you've just flicked a switch. And all of that means that when you do want to slow down, and you use the brake pedal to try and do it smoothly, it just means that you're never quite sure how much force you have to put in, and then you just end up making a really jerky stop, and it's just really annoying. And lots of other electric cars suffer from similar problems, but the Megane does seem particularly bad. There are 4 different levels of regenerative braking for the Megane E-Tech, and you can cycle through them using the paddles on the steering wheel here. In its strongest setting, you can slow the car down pretty much to a standstill, but not quite to a standstill. So even in the strongest setting, you'll still have to use the brake, and you will still find that it's difficult to stop smoothly. But all of that is really the only major gripe with the Megane on the road. In pretty much all other aspects, this is really quite a nice small electric car to drive. It's comfortable, especially on the motorway, and the refinement is really impressive as well. It's very quiet in this interior by small car standards. It's a shame this isn't a bit more exciting to drive though, because it feels relatively agile, but the steering is very, very light. It seems to suddenly change speed once you wind a few degrees of lock on as well. So all of that means it's very easy to maneuver around town, but it's difficult to place accurately on a quick, twisty road. The Megane E-Tech is available in a few different trim levels, but we think the pick of the lineup is the entry-level trim. And that's because, yes, it's the cheapest, but you still get a lot of luxuries in the standard equipment list, like heated front seats, a heated steering wheel, you get keyless entry, and also LED headlights as well. The pricing across the lineup is similar to what you'll get in a VW ID3 and the Cupra Born.
Just bear in mind that the Megane is likely to lose its value quicker than its rivals, which has a big impact on the amount you'll need to pay for this car each month compared to its competitors if you're buying on a PCP finance deal.
And this car, like all of its other rivals, will cost significantly more no matter how you want to buy it compared to an MG4. That MG by electric car standards is unbeatable when it comes to value. The best thing about the Renault Megane E-Tech is this car's cruising manners. It's comfortable and it's quiet.
The worst thing, as we've mentioned, is the brake pedal feel. So a few weaknesses stop the Megane E-Tech being the outright best EV that you can buy. But it has plenty of strengths to mean if you're looking for an electric car at this price point, it should definitely be on your list. For more on the Megane, go to whatcar.com, where you can also save more than £1,200 on this EV right now. But before you go, subscribe to our channel to see lots more new car reviews and tell us in the comments below what you think of the Megane E-Tech.